All right, welcome. My name is Morgan Franklin, and today I'm going to be presenting about the PROV Metadata standard. So we will get started here. All right, so first we're going to do a brief overview. The PROV family of documents consists of 12 documents, including a namespace. It seeks to provide a conceptual framework and schemas that enable the interoperable interchange of provenance information in a heterogeneous environment like the web. The PROV metadata standard was created by the Provenance Working Group in 2013, and it was sponsored by W3C. The PROV metadata model documents define provenance as provenance is information about entities, activities, and people involved in producing a piece of data or thing which can be used to form assessments about its quality, reliability, or trustworthiness. Some of the examples of this could be an image, sound recording, or document that has been created, edited, shared, or changed ownership. Provenance is a concept that has historically been studied with physical objects such as fine art, manuscripts, or books, but in the increasingly digital world, there are examples needed for provenance metadata, not only describing physical items, but also those items, digital versions, and even born digital items. To the right, we have a high-level illustration of the PROV data model provided by the PROV DM document. As you can see, the three main types that exist in PROV are entity, activity, and relationship. The relationships between these types are defined in the 7 relations and their corresponding syntaxes. Those are generation, or it would be the syntactic version would be was generated by, usage, communication, derivation, attribution, association, and delegation. Of note, the naming conventions are in all past tense, as provenance is only interested in what has already occurred and not what is about to occur. Here we have a few clarifying definitions provided in the PROV DM overview on W3C. An entity is a physical, digital, conceptual, or other kind of thing with some fixed aspects. Entities may be real or imaginary. An activity is something that occurs over a period of time and acts upon or with entities. It may include consuming, processing, transforming, modifying, relocating, using, or generating entities. An agent is something that bears some form of responsibility for an activity taking place, for the existence of an entity, or other agent's activity. Additionally, it is useful to note that concepts such as this are grouped together as components based on shared theme in the PROV DM. There are 3 core components: entities and activities, derivation, and agents and responsibility. The PROV DM also provides extended concepts including bundles, which are named set of provenance descriptions, collections, which is an entity that provides a structure to some constituents that themselves are entities, so collections of items, and alternates, which are about relations linking entities referring to the same thing. These final non-core components provide extensibility in the standard to meet a wider and more in-depth set of needs. However, for time's sake, we will focus only on the core components today. So here are some of the core components: entities and activities. Activities utilize entities and activities produce entities. So that's kind of just that kind of back and forth relationship between entities and activities and how they work together in the PROV DM. The other is derivation. Here's a quick definition from the PROV DM overview document, which is a derivation is a transformation of an entity into another, or an update of an entity resulting in a new one, or the construction of a new entity based on a pre-existing entity. So the focus on this being on the influence and affect of entities on one another. And the final being agent and responsibility. These can be related to entities. Activities are related to other entities through attribution, association, and delegation. So we can think of this as the agents with responsibility being authors, artists, photographers, web designers, the like. Next, we're going to go through just a bit of a high-level example of how this might be used. While PROV has a large array of uses, and a simple example of an item, a physical item using PROV DM would actually be an art piece. In this case, let's take a quick look at the Maryland Diptych by Andy Warhol, a famous screen print painting which utilized and altered a famous press picture of Marilyn Monroe from the film Niagara in approximately the year 1953, I believe. So as you can see, the original picture is a black and white photograph. The other is a screen printed painting of that photograph that has been heavily altered. So here would maybe be an example of how that would fit within the PROV DM model. There's two entities, one being the Marilyn diptych, the screen printed painting, and the other being the original photograph. And then two agents, one being Andy Warhol and the other being the Niagara Film Company, as there was not information on the actual photographer. And then the activity would be screen printing. So as you can see, the Marilyn diptych was generated by the activity of screen printing and was derived from the entity of the original photograph. And the Marilyn diptych was attributed to the agent, Andy Warhol, and the original photograph would have been attributed to the original agent, in this case, the Niagara Film Company. Next, a little bit about PROV and RDF in Dublin Core. So PROV-in is actually short for PROV notation. It is a syntax document created to define some of the PROV syntax standards within the PROV document family in order to assist in technology independence, human readability, and grammatical formality. PROV-in operates as a much more human-friendly and understandable syntax that can then be used in various encoding schemes, including PROV XML. The PROV family of documents also provides two documents, PROV DC and PROV RDF, which provide mapping to namespaces or specifications such as the DCMT, as well as provide a translation of DC terms and RDF specifications to PROV-O, the PROV ontology document. In this way, by working with these other largely used standards, interoperability for items utilizing PROV becomes much easier. So these are a couple of current issues and uses of the PROV metadata standard. Some challenges during the time of the creation and afterwards included time constraints and broader constraints in order to allow and creating broader definitions in the data model to allow for wider use and interoperability. However, because of this, specification issues arose, such as how to handle immutable versus immutable attributes and entities. For example, some instances, markup changes like color format, other things may be of important note as new versions in the provenance data and metadata, or sometimes they may not. That can be defined by who is using PROV and what they find important to mark up. It was briefly considered to keep all attributes immutable, but this was additionally limiting. So that's an ongoing conversation of which items immutable or immutable, how to define them, and how to work them into the syntax of various schemas. And increasingly, just because of the wider definition of things, there are some specifications that have to be drilled down a little bit more. A couple current uses of PROV is it's actually used by the Adobe Provisioning Toolkit Enterprise Edition, and it's also sometimes used with other fine arts standard provenance organizations. Europeana has used it some, so it does have a fairly wide range of uses. And that concludes kind of our overview of PROV today. Here are some of the resources, and there will also be an included fully annotated resource document attached. Thank you very much, and y'all have a great day. I appreciate you taking your time to listen to my presentation.